Hey, this is Candia RAQUEL, founder of Centro de Poder, and you are at the Sensual Sessions podcast, the place to explore sensing pleasure through your senses and moving in a way that is completely free from inhibition. And if you haven't already gotten the free guide to awaken sensuality, go to www.centrodepoder.com and grab it. Today we have a very special guest. This is Morry Zelcovitch. He's a scientist and a genius inventor of brainwave reprogramming. So welcome, Morry. Very happy to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm honored.
So you have a tremendous story of transformation. You said that you were quite unhappy on the first part of your life. So what made you like unhappy? Like you were seriously unhappy?
That's a good question. I think well, unhappy is a very minor way to put it. I was completely depressed,
Completely depressed.
severely depressed for 40 years,
4 decades.
4 decades. And I tried to end my life a bunch of times.
You were
And I
suicidal.
was addicted. I was addicted to drugs, alcohol, women. Anything and everything that I could be addicted to, that's what I was addicted to. Did everything wrong, trying to do right, trying to survive, trying to feel better. Heard thousands of voices, literally thousands of injuries, like broken bones, dislocations, torn tendons, smashed teeth, separated discs in my back, concussions, pretty much anything and everything you could imagine was going on with me there. And I figured eventually that it had to have something to do with my brain. Because I was trying all these self-help products that were out there, hypnosis, meditation, even other brainwave entrainments.
Okay.
Nothing helped me, though.
Nothing helped
And
you.
it made me realize that none of it helped me at all. But it didn't help me to feel better. But it did help me because I think it taught me things.
Okay.
I apologize for all the noise. I'm in a bad area and cars are driving by all the time. And if I do up the window, we'll lose our Zoom. So
okay, it's okay.
But what happens is, when I found I couldn't find a way to die, I had to find a way to live.
Wow.
And that's basically what started me on my research and
Wow.
looking. And eventually I came across Brainwave Entrainment, which made sense because I had already figured out by reading neurology journals and neurochemistry journals and quantum physics and a whole bunch of other things, psychology, perception. It struck me that my problem was neurochemical.
Okay.
I had a problem up here with the way my brain was producing chemistry.
Yes.
And when I figured out a way to alter the chemistry, even subtly,
yes,
that changed how I thought and it changed how I felt. And it was just by putting on a pair of headphones, lying down, closing my eyes and hitting play. After all the pills, after all the drugs, after all the searching, it was simply a matter of exposing myself to certain beats and patterns.
Wow.
And that changed everything.
So, that's very interesting that in your case, it was not mind over matter, but matter over mind, in the sense that you were on the train to self-destruction and you found a lot of tools that were helpful because they gave you ideas, but all the meditation, all the self-help didn't work. What worked was like a direct approach to your brain waves. Like you said that you changed your brain chemistry and then you changed the way you thought, which I like it.
You see, it turns out it turns out that brain chemistry is, when you look at your computer screen as an example, what you're seeing is the result of two things. It's the result of the computer arranging a bunch of zeros and a bunch of ones. And that creates the imagery on your computer. But the second part of it is your perception of what you see on the screen, the colors, the shapes, all that other stuff. So it turns out that your brain works the same way a computer works. Not a real surprise that everything we design is based on us.
Of course.
So the brain creates chemistry, or kind of like a recipe.
Yes.
And the recipe creates a salad or a soup or a this or a that in cooking. But in our lives, the recipe creates happiness or joy or hate or stress or anxiety, or aggravation, whatever. So what happened was, by altering my brainwave activity, because it's the brainwave, it's your thoughts create activity and the activity creates the chemistry. So by altering my activity using brainwave entrainment, which is, at the time, it was basically a bunch of pulse sounds like bump, 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 bump. When my neurons, which are your brain cells, started following those patterns, because your nerve cells, your neurons fire an electric pulse. And depending on how many times a second and the region of the brain that they pulse that rate, that dictates the kind of chemistry, things like endorphins, hormones, neurotransmitters that are produced. And it's those endorphins, hormones, and neurotransmitters that create the chemistry that creates your ability to experience something. So if you were to come up to me and slap me in the face and my head were to fly off to the side and bounce back, but my brain didn't create chemistry to acknowledge that event, yes, my head would have gone off to the side, and yes, it would have gone back, but I wouldn't be consciously aware of it happening.
Of course.
Because my brain didn't create the chemistry that allowed me to experience it. So when we take that way of thinking and that understanding and we transpose it onto my life, I was creating chemistry, or a recipe, if you will, that was creating really poor tasting food, not nutritious, and it tasted like garbage. That's why my life was garbage. When I started understanding the dynamics of how my mind was working and how neurochemistry played a part, and I was able to alter my chemistry using entrainment, because I read lots of books, I did all the exercises, I tried meditation, I did this, I did that, and none of it helped me, because I'm taking action, and do I believe it's working? Am I doing it right? Do I even know? Am I supposed to feel like this? Too many questions, too much me getting in the way of myself. With brainwave entrainment, though, it doesn't matter, because it's a natural response the brain has to frequency. It's called the frequency following response. So people who don't believe me or think I'm full of it, just remember the last time you were listening to music, right? And you were doing this mindlessly, or tapping your toes mindlessly. That is a form of entrainment. Yeah. Now, with my tones and pulses and even visuals, we are doing the same thing that the music did to your feet. I'm doing it to your neurons, which helps to alter the chemistry. When we alter the chemistry, that alters your experience. So I went from being depressed all the time and hearing thousands of voices in my head and hurting myself to someone who doesn't feel like that at all anymore. And even the first time I listened, there were changes, because my chemistry subtly changed. And when the chemistry suddenly changes, your perception changes. And when we're depressed, I can't speak for others, so I'll speak for me. When I was severely depressed all those decades, and I suddenly felt, just by lying down and putting on headphones, and I suddenly felt something different, that let me know it's possible to feel different. And that was so empowering.
It's possible to feel different. This is very relieving to listen, because there's a lot of spiritual bypass nowadays. Like you see it, meditate, you go to the retreat, or you make the affirmations, or you shift your consciousness, and automatically your life is supposed to change. And the problem is that if it doesn't change, then we default into shame and guilt. Like, okay, that approach didn't help because there is something wrong with me. Instead of thinking that
that's right,
that's just part of the equation, that's just one way to go, but there's another way that is directly acting on the material aspect or of ourselves, that is the chemistry, the physiology of the brain, the actions that we express through our body. So it makes me
That's right.
that you change your body and then you will change your mind. And in a way, it makes a lot of sense to me, because it's like thoughts, the discursive thinking aspect of our mind is very quick, very quick, sharp, and yeah, also acute. Like, you get an aha moment, a realization, but if you don't make flesh out of that realization, it's gonna fade away and you will come with another idea. Like, that's
That's
why
right.
sometimes, like, TikTok is great and reels on Instagram are great, but only if you stop and really turn that mental insight into something that you can touch, like an experience in your body. Otherwise, the next TikTok, it's gonna distract you from the previous realizations. So I
Yeah.
was saying that the mind is very elusive, the thinking. Like, I'm gonna lose 20 kilos in 1 month. And you said that, but that doesn't mean that you're gonna physically lose those kilos. Whereas if we go the other way around, if you do something that is losing the actual weight, your mind is gonna change. So first we change the body and then the rest changes. And this other journey, it's so refreshing. So refreshing. So how exactly does brainwave entrainment works?
Okay, so it's actually quite simple.
Okay.
Like I was saying about the frequency following response, our brains naturally follow frequency. Everything is vibration. So it doesn't even matter if you can hear. You know, hearing is simply an interpretation of vibration by the brain.
Yes.
So no one really hears anything anyway. There's really no such thing as hearing. Nobody is hearing me. No one is hearing you. If anyone listening to this puts their hand over the speakers of their phone or their computer, whatever they're listening to, they'll feel vibration.
Feel vibration.
That's what it is. If if everybody listening to this listens to your voice or my voice, and they had the ability to recreate our voices, not by holding up a phone and recording it, but by what we actually hear, our voices would be slightly different in every recording because it's the brain that's interpreting it. So it's really not a matter of the sound, because sound really doesn't exist. It's a matter of the vibration. So everything has a resonant frequency. Everything vibrates. And the brain, when I talk frequency, I'm not talking high and low pitched frequencies. I'm talking pulse rate. Bop, 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 bop,
Okay.
bop, 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 bop. That's how your neurons behave.
Okay.
So your neurons react through the frequency following response, and that creates something called the cortical evoked response, which is the response of the top layer of your brain to stimulation. Now, we can only measure the top layer of the brain when we use electrodes because we're not sticking pins into our brain that are going deep below the surface. We can really only tell what's happening on the surface. And we assume that similar frequencies, similar rates are happening deeper down as well. But at least we know on top more or less what's happening. Different frequencies release different chemicals. So brainwave entrainment works on the basis of vibration. So it's on, off, on, off, on, off. And the neuron gets that programming and it goes, oh, I have to release this chemistry. I have to release this endorphin. I have to release this, neurotransmitter. And then it's the combination of which that create the experience. So it's interesting because if you like a song and you play it a lot, eventually you'll get sick of it.
Yes.
Because it's the same thing over and over and over again. So there's songs that I used to love that I still won't listen to now because I find them annoying because I've listened to them too much when I was younger. But that being said, brainwave entrainment is even more repetitive.
Okay.
Like imagine some of my recordings are only brainwave entrainment, which means you have a background noise. Shh, and you have the pulse beat, and that's all you're
Okay. Background noise.
couldn't even tell you why. I think it's because it's natural, because it simulates a natural event in the brain. And because of that, it's not music, which follows a mathematical formula. It's simply something nature does in the brain anyway. So the brain is very comforted by these stable tunes. When we were living in our cave dwelling days, many millennia ago, we didn't have TV, we didn't have smartphones, we didn't have radio, we didn't have books, we didn't have this, we didn't have that. Basically, we lived in the moment, right? Like, I mean, we all live in the moment anyway, but we really lived in the moment. Our mind, our body, everything was exactly now. And if we got scared, it was because there was something to be afraid of, an animal attacking or something like that. Now we're stressed under any reason. Taxes, sociology, society, our wives, our husbands, our kids, our bosses, work, life, the universe, everything stresses the crap out of us. Back then, it's reasonable to assume that we had stable brainwave frequencies for longer periods of time because we didn't have the stress we have now. Believe it or not, living back in our cave dwelling days, we were better off than we are now. We were less distracted. We didn't have all the problems. At least it's a reasonable assumption to make that that's what's going on. So think of it this way. Our brain, even though it has evolved, hasn't really changed very much in all that time. Okay. It still does the same thing. There's autonomic responses like breathing and digestion and, blood flow and heartbeat and stuff. And there's things we have to do. We have to think about raising my arm to lift something. We have to do this. So the brain essentially does the same thing it's always done. The only difference is that now we have so many other things going on that we don't have a chance for our brains to produce stable frequencies for very long. Remember, I told you that thoughts create frequency, which creates chemistry. Well, our brains are designed to function based on this assumption. The brain is supposed to hit certain frequencies regularly and for long periods of time to produce neurochemistry that we are designed to function on. So let me speak English for those of you out there who aren't scientists. You're a car. And you have very little fuel, and your brake fluid is low, and your alternator fluid is low, and your steering fluid is low, and everything is low. Your car isn't going to run very well because it doesn't have the right fluid levels. Well, it's the same thing with your brain. It's designed to run on proper fluid levels too, the right amounts of, norepinephrine and endorphins and other neurotransmitters, acetylcholine, all these things, dopamine. All these things are supposed to be present in specific quantities to top you off as a car and make you happy and run well. Well, with all the stress and anxiety we have, you hook anyone up to an EEG, an electroencephalogram that reads the top layer of their brain, you'll see colors lighting up everywhere. And nothing stays on for very long. It's on for a split second, 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 which means the brain isn't producing the chemistry it's designed to run on. So just like your car, you don't have all the fluids you need to run properly.
Okay.
That's the problem. Brainwave entrainment allows your brain to get back into those states to stay in dominant frequencies long enough to produce the chemistry your brain was designed to run on, your body and mind were designed to function with, which explains why I went from being someone who wanted to be dead forever for 40 years to someone who wants to live forever now.
Nice.
Because I love life.
You love life, finally, thanks to
I love life.
Brainwave entrainment. So practically you were running on the leftovers of your reserve fluids in the brain. Like when you just have a sigh of gasoline in the tank, and you just arrived on time when you were 40 years old to the gas station to refill your
Pretty
brain.
much. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah, I'd put it that way for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, you arrived sharp. Nice.
Yeah, but I didn't have GPS, so I didn't know how to get to the gas station.
Yeah, well, that was maybe
So I had to teach myself.
yeah.
Yeah,
This is great news, and this leads me to the topic of sensuality, of the ability of sensing pleasure through the senses, and this is
sure.
an ability that becomes inhibited because of depression and many other factors. Just our hustle culture of striving and pushing leads us to numbness, to practically be like just not dead, but walking on autopilot without being immersed on
Yep.
the experience. So I like to know more about your perspective of the effect that brainwave entrainment has on fleshly perception. And I don't only mean about like the intimate sexual aspect of sensuality, but how do you see that brainwave entrainment um, positively could affect, say, the ability to delight in a cup of tea, the ability to delight taking a walk in the park, like the ability to get a felt sense in the body of being alive in the best way possible?
Well, that's a great question. The thing is, with brainwave entrainment, I look at the mind and the brain as this central processing unit, the CPU of your life. So for you to notice anything, it has to pass through here first. And then your brain has to interpret it, create chemistry that allows you to experience it. So it's entirely because of your brain that you feel things and that you get sensations and that you feel good or you feel bad or you feel turned on or turned off or excited or bored or anything at all is because of your brain. What brainwave entrainment can do is it can help you to get away from the distractions. And when you have less distracting you,
Yes.
you are more likely to have more resources free to experience what's going on. And that's the thing. If I go like, okay, you didn't want to talk about sex, but let's talk about sex quickly because it's a good example.
Okay.
So let's say I just met my wife today. I didn't know her before, right? And now it's 3 days later, because let's say I'm not a total sex fiend, and it was 3 dates before we actually slept together. So in the first version of me, I'm scared because what if she doesn't like how I make love?
Okay.
What if I don't turn her on? What if I don't excite her? What if I don't stimulate her? What if? I'm thinking all these what ifs. I'm distracting myself. So now when it comes time for the action, I mean, obviously she is turned on by me because she's naked next to me, right? I mean, duh.
Yeah.
But I'm self-conscious and I'm worried and I'm nervous. So of course I don't even realize that. So I'm nervous. And when it comes time to do the deed, I'm being, I can't do anything because I've totally screwed my brain. I'm distracted, right? Too many other thoughts are going through my head rather than the joy of the moment, right? Okay, now let's take me in a different direction. Now it's a different planet, a different world, a different version of me. And I have these concerns a little bit. They're in the back of my mind. But this time I do some brainwave entrainment. And I do it with the intention to clear my mind and just to be present in the moment.
Yes.
And I do it and I feel the little tingling, like just talking about it, I feel tingling in my fingers, So I feel the little tingling that I feel when I start doing it. I start feeling relaxed. I feel heavy and I feel light at the same time. And I'm just floating in the ether and I'm just, I'm not even thinking about that anymore. My mind is just whatever the hell my mind wants to do or nothing. Right. And then when I'm done, it's not a matter of the sexual act anymore. It's a matter of the passion. It's a matter of just showing this person that I care and that I want to be with them. And it has nothing to do with the sex act itself anymore. But now when that act maybe happens, because I'm not thinking about it, because I'm not worried about it, because all I really want to do is, in my mind and in my body, cuddle, if you will.
Yes.
I'm not pressuring myself. Because I don't have all this weight on me, it's easier, because I recently lost something like 15, 16 kilos.
Yes.
And it's easier to walk.
Of course.
Removing the weight makes it easier to walk.
Yes.
Removing the thought, the negative thinking, makes it easier to be present in the moment. And when we're present in the moment, we're more likely to, well, look at you. You're in the moment, you're smiling, right? I'm smiling. This is what the moment does. This is what being in the moment does. This is what not pressuring us does. And the truth is, even if I still had a problem, who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Who cares? SHIT happens. No one's going to be Superman every day. So who cares? It's more about being present for the other person, being there, enjoying the moment, enjoying the company. None of the physical essence, I think, is enjoyed more when you don't think about the physical essence.
Exactly.
I think it's enjoyed more when you just think about being. The energy aspect matters. And all the rest of it is secondary. It doesn't matter. Look, when I was 16, 18 years old, I thought sex was the only thing there was. That's all it was. Sex. Everything was sex, 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 sex. Now I'm 61 and sex is nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not the be all and the end all. To be honest, I prefer the emotional connection more often than I want the physical. The physical is something that lasts while you're doing the act.
Of course.
But the emotional, the mental part of it, the part up here, that never stops. I'm telling you, when I see my wife, and we've been together, we got married just after 50. And I just met her when I was in my late 40s, right? But so I've been with her like 14 years, 15 years, something like that, who knows how long. But it feels like 5 minutes and it feels like 1,000 years at the same time.
Wow.
And when I see her, I feel my energy light up. I want everyone on the planet to feel the way I feel about my partner. I want them to feel that way about their partner. Or if they don't have a partner, I want them to feel that way about themselves. Because you know what? Everything isn't good for everybody. Yeah. Some people are happier on their own. That's fine. Don't let society con you into believing you need to be with someone so you can be miserable, if that's going to make you miserable. Trust yourself. Here, yes. Your heart, yes. And you can't see I'm pointing out my gut. Yes. Those are the 3 areas, which, by the way, all have neurons, brain cells.
Yeah.
That's right. So they all have messages to give you. And if all 3 agree, then you are doing the right thing. If you don't have one of them agreeing, you should take a few deep breaths, back up, and think about what you could change that would make you think something differently. Because honestly, passion is all here.
Yeah, passion is all here.
All there.
Yeah, it's an internal balance that you express, and that it becomes synergistic with who you engage with, or your reality, your work, whatever moves you, and you're in such a candor that you move the other and you move through your work. And I love how you said that maybe 14, 15 years since you met your wife, and it's so long, but it's at the same time just a second. And to me, like, wow, that's eternity in a moment. That's presence. Like, we are here now and nothing else exists, and that's the ultimate reality. But we so easily go away from the only thing that we have, that is this life now. And it's amazing that this amazing tool of brainwave entrainment is available now, because like you said, like, it starts inside of you. So you met your wife after your first 4 suicidal decades. So you said you married her when you both were around 50. So
Yeah.
you already came back to this center that you are expressing now. So it's fascinating, so much that I want to know more. Tell us, me and the sensualist, how can we know more about your work? How can we get, I don't know if you
Well,
have like a freebie or something to get a
I
taste
do.
of
I
what
do.
we're talking about, because like, you all listen, Morry, this is key for sexuality. So what shows up in the encounter with your beloved, it's you, not your thinking mind, not your
That's right.
discoursiveness, not your worries. Like, well, yeah, you show up with all that too, but you don't let that get in the way. Why? Because your little liquids inside the brain are happily dancing. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah,
That's the whole thing, you know. Look, you feel good for a reason and you feel bad for a reason. It's not random or
correct,
arbitrary.
correct.
Feeling good tells you you're doing and thinking the right things.
Yes,
Feeling bad is you're doing and thinking the wrong things.
yes,
I call it the red light on the dashboard of your life. So it's
yes,
there to tell you if you're on the right track or on the wrong track. So if you're nervous, if you're worried, if you're this, if you're that, don't be upset. Say thank you, because that's part of you saying, okay, time to rethink things. You're not doing the right thing for you. That's why I'm making you feel this way. It's love that's making you feel uncomfortable because it wants you to be better. It wants you to feel better. And you
yes,
were talking about living in the moment. Living in the moment is funny. And then I'll tell you how you can find me.
yeah,
So, living in the moment is something we all do. You can't help but live in the moment. It's impossible to not live in the moment. The trick is to bring your consciousness and
yes.
your thinking into the present moment. Think about it. Do you remember what you had for dinner last night? You don't have to tell me, but do you remember eating last night? Good. When I asked you, do you remember about last night? When was it for you? It was now, right?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
you were chewing dinner last night, chewing, actually, when was it for you?
I
It
get,
was now.
yeah,
Has to be now. You can't chew in the past.
of
You
course.
can't chew in the future. Right. You can't breathe in the past and you can't breathe in the future. So what does that tell us? There is only now.
There is only
There's
one.
only ever been now. There's never been the past. There's never been the future. It's always now. When tomorrow gets here, when will it be for you? It'll be now. Now is all that exists. That's the only thing there is. It's so important to wrap your head around that, to realize that now is it. And if we start paying attention now, everything else will take care of itself. People go, oh, well, I got to plan for the future. If you take care of now, the now that comes tomorrow will be just fine.
Yes,
But don't ignore right now, because now is the only thing you can have influence over. There is no influence over the future or the past, just now. So pay attention to now. If people want to find me, and with freebies especially, they can go to Linktree, linktr.ee/MORRYZELCO. If you're not an American, it's ZELCO.
your
But
name.
it's again Linktree, linktr.ee/MORRYZELCO.
CO. Yeah, from
And
Morris.
there's sample recordings there, there's freebies, and there's a lot of information and ways to access different websites of mine and different offers as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Morry. This has been a pleasure.
Pleasure's been all mine, seriously. Totally had a sensual experience.
sensual experience.
Not
So,
sexual, sensual.
sensual. So sensualist, the time is now. And if you often get derailed from this felt sense of nowness of the present, go and check on Morry Zelcovitch at his link tree, that is just the second part of his name, Morry Zelco, and get his freebies. And again, if you haven't get the free guide to awaken sensuality, go to www.centrodepoder.com and get yourself signed up. You will also get the Essential Sessions episodes delivered on your inbox weekly. So see you next time. And until then, remember to take the time to sense your fire so you can share the flame.